Day though, the stomach roll that I had felt since I had arrived. I chuckled to myself as I watched the custodian soak the water out of the thin industrial carpeting below the leak. It wasn't a laugh at his frustration or misfortune with the water that flowed from the ceiling. The way that he hung his head down below his shoulders as he worked on the mess made it look like he had no head at all. The headless custodian, just like the headless horseman of Sleepy Hollow, fame with lower stakes. My stomach gurgled like a pot that was about to overflow, so I made my way to the restroom. I hoped that no one would be in there to hear whatever gastrointestinal pyrotechnics that I would produce. With my luck, I thought, there wouldn't be an available stall. The walk down the access hallway to the restrooms was free of any run-ins or small talk with coworkers. Standing inside the white tile bathroom, the temperature felt 10 degrees cooler than the cubicle bullpen. Cold air filled my lungs and the rumbling in my stomach had begun to cease. Pushing open the stall, I sat down on the closed toilet lid and propped my knees on my elbows, resting my head between my hands, and I waited to see if the ache in my stomach would pass. With my eyes closed and sitting in the cooler temperature, it felt as though I may have recovered from it without the usual round of light vomiting. The humming noise in my ears was beginning to intensify. It had been present since the first day that I started there, but it had never been that overbearing. In the cool, empty bathroom, it grew to a pitch that I had never heard before. Shifting my hands over my ears, I tucked my head into my chest tightly in an attempt to block out the increasing noise. My eyes were closed, but I could see the light rise brightly to meet the same unnatural level as the humming continued. Wet drops of liquid began to flow from my ears and down my jawline. I knew that my ears were probably bleeding, but I was too afraid to uncover them to check for the fear that the ungodly hum would have ruptured my eardrums. The overwhelming sensation of the droning, mixed with the unnaturally bright light, had completely disoriented me. Blindly, I drew away a hand from my right ear and began to feel for the door to the stall. I had to get out of that bathroom before I went mad. As I stood from the toilet to make my exit, I continued to thrust my arm forward to find the latch. My hand finally found the smooth facing of the stall door, and I slid my fingers down to where the latch should have been, but I didn't find anything. My heart rate had started to rise and panic had taken over. With all my strength, I started slamming my left shoulder into the stall door. The humming and brightness of the light hadn't subsided. My pulse raced as I scrambled around the bathroom stall like a caged-in animal. The stall door would bow out a bit each time that I hit it, but it never gave away. I slammed into the door. As I ran my shoulder into it for the last time, I mistakenly thought the door was giving way. I was moving forward now beyond where the door was, but it felt as if my body was passing through gelatin. When I opened my eyes to see what was happening, all I could see was a gray blur. The blinding light and maddening hum were gone for a moment. It seemed as though I drifted forward through the gray haze for hours. There was no frame of reference for where I was or what was surrounding me. My limbs felt frozen in place and my eyes could only glare straight ahead, struggling to find any point in the distance to concentrate on. Suddenly, my slow movement forward began to accelerate, and I tumbled down onto an unforgiving surface. My hand slid over the top of rough fibers, leaving hot, raw flesh on my palms. A moment later, my head made contact with the ground, and my vision transitioned from gray to white to total darkness. I don't know how long I lay on the floor unconscious, but the first thing I could remember when I started to come to was the humming. It was back, but nowhere near as intense as it had been before. My face was flat against the rough carpet of before, and I could feel the moisture on my skin and in my clothing. Before I opened my eyes, I remember thinking to myself that the toilets in the bathroom had to have been leaking. The thought of laying in a pool of toilet water disgusted me at first, but the coolness was almost comforting. My eyes were still closed, and I relished for a moment the fact that my stomach was no longer waging war with the rest of my body. It was at that moment that it occurred to me that there was no carpet in the bathroom at work. The entire room was a sterile white with cheap ceramic tile. The industrial lighting always reflected annoyingly off of each characterless surface. My eyes jolted open and began to drink in the alien yet familiar room. The walls were all a lifeless yellow, free of windows or decoration. When I was a child, I could remember going to my great-grandmother's house with my parents. She had smoked cigarette after cigarette as we sat in the old cracker box house, and the decades' worth of nicotine. It had painted the walls the same sickly color as this room. It looked like the insurance office that I had worked at for the past few weeks. Somehow, it also didn't look like it at all. It was the same basic layout, but it felt all wrong. Thin, rough carpet, a shade or two darker than the walls, stretched across the room. As I pushed myself up onto my feet, I could hear the squish of moisture below them. There wasn't enough water in the carpet to stand on top, but the sound and shifting fibers under my feet told me that the entire room was saturated. The reek of mildew was like a long-forgotten gym bag of sweaty clothing. I had expected the overpowering smell to make my stomach turn again, but the sensation never came. It felt as though I hadn't eaten in ages. My stomach growled with hunger rather than the usual hangover gurgle. I placed my hands on my stomach to comfort the rumbling, and was surprised to feel unusually long fingernails scrape against the fabric of my cheap button-up shirt. Holding my hands in front of my face, I could see that the nails were longer than I had ever allowed them to grow. The tips were the same dull yellow as the nicotine-covered walls. Lifting my hand to my face, I used the butt of my palm to rub my eyes in hope of readjusting my vision. As my hand slid down my face, I could feel an even coating of beard growth on my cheeks. Regardless of how much I had let myself go over the years, I had never allowed myself more than 2 days' worth of stubble. I was equally surprised to feel the shaggy hair brushing my forehead and the top of my ears. My hair had always been cut short out of laziness more than anything. If you buzz your hair down to about a 1/4 inch with a beard trimmer, it saves money on haircuts and saves you the time of having to fix it in the morning before going to work. How long had I been there? Drifting through the gray haze, it seemed like hours, but my hair and nails had grown as though I hadn't groomed myself in weeks. "Hello?" I said quietly. "Is anyone in here?" Silence. "Hello?" I said slightly louder than the first time. "Please, if anyone is here, please say something." No response. My pulse had started to surge. "Hello?" I screamed as loudly as I could. Before I could follow up on my initial shout, my voice began to echo back to me. It was mixed with the familiar hum from the lights above my head. The bulbs dimmed and reignited with each echo. The pitch and vibration of the echo rattled inside of my skull, and I placed my hands over my ears again. Dry blood crunched under my palms as I pressed them against the sides of my head. I knew the echo would have driven me mad if I had continued to listen. After a few moments, I could see that the lights were no longer flickering in response to the echo, and I uncovered my ears. My eyes drifted from side to side in the room, taking in the details. It was the cubicle bullpen where I had worked those past few weeks, but all of the furniture was now gone. Where there had once been dozens of removable walls, desks, chairs, and generic potted plants sat in unsettling space. The wet carpet still had the indentions of heavy furniture and worn paths where the office drones had walked. Even the wall that had the dark stain from the leaking water looked the same. I could see small ribbons of water pouring from the ceiling tile above it. Red and yellow stains now spread to the 3 tiles from where the leak had started. The tile closest to the wall where it had originated was now almost a black in the center. It sagged so deeply, I couldn't understand how the tile hadn't given way under pressure. It looked like a swollen wound that was readying itself to rupture, and spilled all of its foul fluid onto the floor below. In a daze, I stumbled forward and began to walk toward the hallway that led to the reception area at the front of the building. While the lights overhead burned brightly, I could see that the hallway was void of any illumination. As I stepped closer, the bulbs began to flicker and hum to life, as the lights over my shoulder toward the back of the bullpen began to crackle and fade to black. When I entered the narrow hallway, the lights burned brightly, and the low ceilings made the constant humming grow in intensity. The tinnitus-like ringing in my ears began to rise, and my head began to throb. My eyelids twitched as I focused on the hallway ahead of me. It should have only been about 20 feet to the reception area, but the hallways in front of me seemed to stretch on for miles. Overhead, lights began to kick on one by one continuously, into a never-ending tunnel. Glancing over my shoulder, I could see that the cubicle room was now completely dark. My feet began to amble forward. I walked at a medium pace down the hallway for what I assumed was about 10 or 15 minutes, but no end was in sight. Lights continued to turn on overhead, producing the same dull humming noise that I had become so accustomed to. The thought had crossed...
What is it? Why didn't I panic when I see a dead body? Is there something wrong with me? Like shit. Why didn't I panic or spew when I see my friend's dead body where I just met in the back rooms? I'm worried that there might be something wrong with me. I'm worried that there might be a darkness inside of me. Like shit. I'm fucking worried, man. I'm hoping not. But if that's the case, I guess the darkness is inside of me, if that's the case. Nothing I can do, may as well embrace it. If I have a darkness inside of me, like a psychopath inside of me, may as well embrace the psychopath side of me.
My mind numerous times to call for help, but I was too scared that the terrible hum-filled echo would return and drive me to complete madness, so I decided against it. It was clear to me that no one else was there anyway, until I heard these squishing footsteps behind me in the distance. As I turned to look, I was surprised to see that the entrance to the cubicle area was directly behind me. After walking for an undetermined period, I had expected to see an endless hallway, but I had made no progress at all. Stepping back into the room, the lights began to flutter back to life, revealing the same empty room as before. Only it wasn't the same. There was still no furniture and the carpet was still soaked in water, but the walls looked different. They had become covered in slick streaks. When I had left the room earlier to enter that endless hallway, there was only a single dark line of water running down the wall. Upon my return, the entire room was covered in dark streaks leading from the ceiling down to the carpet. Water had now pooled deeply enough that the reflection of the humming light bulbs could be seen on the floor. The ceiling had become pockmarked with the red and yellow swelling tiles. They sagged disgustingly between the supports. Fat drops of stagnant water gathered at the tips of the swollen tiles and dripped silently onto the sodden floor. Something splashed and swished to my right, and it made me jump. I spun my body to face the sound and saw a figure curled into a ball in the corner of the room. Drops of the filthy water peppered their dry white shirt, and I could see it beginning to cling to their emaciated frame. Light sobs and mutters from the huddled mass drifted into my ears and almost sounded like music after the unending humming. "Hello?" I said hesitantly as I slowly walked toward the corner. "Are you okay? Do you know where we are?" The figure lifted its head from behind a curled arm. Even with the addition of a new scruffy beard as stringy hair and an uncharacteristically thin frame, I still recognized them. It was Brandon, my cubicle neighbor. He was wearing the same nondescript outfit that he did nearly every day, but it looked careworn and tattered in comparison with his usual professional exterior. "Brandon?" I asked. "Hey, is that you, buddy?" He didn't respond but maintained eye contact with me. His eyes were piercing and he seemed to shake as I walked towards him. With every footfall, his arms squeezed around his body more tightly. It looked as though he were trying to use his feet to push himself further into the corner with no success. "Brandon," I said reassuringly. "It's me. We're gonna be alright. How did you get here?" His mouth opened and a dry croaking came out. The words were incoherent as he rasped. He cleared his throat and stretched his neck before trying again. "It was time to go home," he finally replied in a shaky voice. "It was time to go home and you were gone." "What?" "It was time to go home and you weren't in your cubicle," he stammered. "I went to look for you and now I'm here." I asked Brandon how he had ended up here, but he just kept repeating himself over and over. It was time to go home. I wasn't in my cubicle. He went looking for me, and now he was here.
Let him
No
calm
matter what
down.
I asked, he never changed his answer. I offered him my hand to help him up, and to my surprise, he accepted it. Lifting him to his feet should have been easier considering how malnourished he looked, but this made me realize that I was likely in the same state. Seeing Brandon in the poor condition that he was in made me realize that I hadn't felt well either. My stomach grumbled with hunger. The roof of my mouth met my tongue like sandpaper on concrete. My joints ached with every step. I felt so much older. It felt like I had been in that place for years without food or water. Maybe I had been. Nothing in my body felt quite right. It was almost as though I had aged a decade or more in a few hours. I beckoned Brandon to follow me and returned to the hallway that should have taken us to the reception area. The lights behind us began to dim just as they had before, and the electric hum of the lights ahead stirred into life. We turned the corner in the hallway to see the same endless tunnel that had been there when I went that way before. Our pace was as swift as our weak legs would allow us. Brandon's labored breathing behind me was a welcome noise, as it somewhat covered the hum of the lights over our heads. I tried to make conversation with him, but he continued with the same replies from earlier in a loop. But still, he kept pace with me. After what felt like hours of walking in the endless tunnel, I thought that I could see an end to it. The overhead lights of the hallway gave way to what appeared to be a larger, well-lit room beyond. I thought to myself that perhaps the last time I entered the hallway, I had imagined walking. Maybe the shock of this unusual place had caused me to hallucinate. Even Brandon seemed to have higher spirits than earlier. He tapped my shoulder, and when I looked at him, he pointed ahead with a smile. And we quickened our pace, even as we struggled against fatigue and hunger. By the time that we had almost reached the new room, we were almost running. Brandon's breathing had become ragged and heavy, but I could still hear him keeping pace just behind my shoulder. The end of the hallway was getting closer and closer, and my eyes struggled to adjust to the lights inside the room. The humming noise was only becoming louder. We entered the room and my heart sank as my eyes took it in. It was the cubicle room again, The near endless hallway had only led us back to where we had started. But the room was different than when we had left it. The walls were the same monotone yellow as I originally had remembered them. All of the ceiling tiles were perfectly intact. None of the walls were marred by the dark streams of water leaking down from the ceiling. Even the carpet below our feet had been dry. In the center of the room was the custodian from our office. His head still hung low past his shoulders, and he was using an old mop to soak the last of the water from the thin commercial carpet. Dirty swirls of water poured from the mop wringer into a scuffed yellow bucket beside him. "Hey," I yelled to him. "Hey, do you know how to get out of here?" The man didn't respond. He only continued soaking dirty water from the carpet and wringing it into his bucket. "Hey man," I shouted at him again from across the room. "We can't find our way out. Can you help us?" As I finished my sentence, my words began to echo again with the electric humming undertone. "Help us." My ears began to throb again until the echo had dissipated. Still, the custodian didn't acknowledge us. In the corner of my eye, I could see Brandon begin to shuffle slowly in the custodian's direction. He had become unsteady on his feet, and I feared that we had exerted too much of our remaining energy during the run down the hallway. He began to wave his arms over his head. "It's time to go home," Brandon said shakily. He wasn't in his cubicle, and I went to look for him. Brandon continued forward, repeating the same sentences time after time. The custodian never turned to look at him. His soggy mop made beyond the strip from the carpet to the wringer. He never turned his head. I was frozen in place and watched as Brandon continued forward. My pulse was rising again, and I knew that I should have stopped him from moving any further, but I was frozen in place. The dry husk of my vocal cords wouldn't even allow me to call out to him. As he reached the custodian, he extended one of his waving arms and tapped the man on the shoulder. The custodian ignored him and continued to soak up the putrid water from the carpet. Brandon began tapping him more rapidly with the same result. After a few moments of trying to get his attention, I saw Brandon grab a fistful of the man's overalls and turn him around. Brandon stumbled back and fell to the floor as the thing turned to face him. The figure of a man stood before us, but there was no head at all. Its coveralls were unzipped to the pelvic bone, revealing a chest covered in hundreds of reptilian eyes. They blinked rapidly in a rotation, producing the look of a hypnotizing swirl. As soon as the last eye blinked, the first one began again. Below the cluster of eyes, a circular mouth of wide, sharp teeth chittered. 3 rope-like tongues dangled and flopped wildly from the opening covering the crotch of the coveralls in thick saliva. They began to extend toward Brandon, who had become frozen in fear on the floor in front of the thing. The mop dropped from its hands, splashing into the bucket. They weren't hands exactly. Its arms ended in 2 fleshy crab claws lined on the inside, with jagged fingernails. Flakes of red and yellow splotches contrasted with the creature's pale skin. In an instant, the 3 writhing tongues extended forward and wrapped around Brandon's wrists and throat. Brandon began to slide forward on the carpet, and the abomination's round mouth opened wider, and its teeth began to rotate slowly in the gray gums. Its eyes began to blink more rapidly, and I was transfixed by the shifting pattern. Brandon didn't even struggle as he grew closer to the wriggling maw. His head went in first, and there was a wet crunch. Brandon's body began to spasm violently. His right leg swung wildly to the outside as the thing began to slide his shoulders into the pulsing mouth. A foot connected with the bucket of filthy water and sent it spinning to the side. The sudden movement from the bucket broke my fixation on the horror before me. I turned and ran back into the endless hallway. Lights bloomed into life and the overwhelming hum began to increase. The wet crunching and snapping of bones were enough to make me thankful that the electric calm had overtaken it. My legs ached and my lungs felt as though they may burst as I pounded down the hallways. I had expected to run down the hallway for hours, but after only minutes, there was an unexpected hard right turn ahead of me. The momentum that I had gained, paired with the lack of control in my legs, caused me to go crashing into the wall as I attempted to make the turn. When my shoulder connected to the wall, I had expected it to bounce off a bit, but instead, my body began.
Pause it. Head to bed. I'm tired. There you are. See you guys in the morning, I guess. Or whenever the fuck I wake up. You know what I mean? See you whenever. Well, just another, just another day or whatever in the back rooms, Press play.
And slide through. As my
LeBron.
head passed beyond the boundary of the yellow wall, the gray haze overtook my vision once again. I continued to feel as though I were drifting sideways. Closing my eyes, I relished the silence and the absence of light. I came to on my back on the bathroom floor to a light tapping on my face. A faint voice had filled my ears and my eyes began to open. Brandon stood over the top of me with a worried look on his face. His voice finally came into focus. "It was time to go home and you were gone," he said. My heart raced. "I went to look for you." "No, don't say that." I stammered as I batted his hand away from my face. "Don't say that." Brandon looked at me with a puzzled stare. "You alright?" he asked as he had extended his hand to help me up. I took it and pushed myself from the ground. "You look like you've been through it, man." I nodded as I ran my hands over my face. The beard and shaggy hair were gone. My fingernails were back to their usual, well-manicured length. My joints felt great. Looking down at my watch, I could see that the time was 5:32 p.m. "I had the wildest dream today at my desk," Brandon said. "I was in this room. Not right now." I sat and held my hand up in his direction. "This hangover is killing me and I'm ready to get home." Brandon and I walked out of the bathroom through the cubicle bullpen and into the hallway to the reception area. As we rounded the corner, I caught a glimpse of the janitor in his coveralls facing away from us. He paid us no mind and we returned the favor. I increased my pace and Brandon followed behind. I'll never step foot in that office again. I think I'm done drinking too. One day, I'm going to have to get my act together, find a better job, form better habits. This isn't for me. I don't know where I went for those eternity-long minutes, but I never want to see it again.
LeBron.
Wanna go get away, but booking travel, it seems to be so complicated. Till kayak made it easy, no more getting frustrated. We got hotels, cars, and flights, travel anywhere you like. Kayak is the only sight you need. Now you're traveling.
The crumbling gray stone front of 4311 N Street stared down at me as I pulled up outside. The old office building had a dark, cold feeling to it, causing me to shiver momentarily. As I cut the engine and the rattle of my old Honda ceased abruptly. There were stories told about this building, and not the feel-good, happy kind. Rumor had it that the century-old tower was cursed. Unexplainably high death rates of those working in the building were the first clue, but there were others. The elevators broke down with people in them constantly. There were accidents and injuries far beyond the norm. At least once a year, someone jumped from the roof. I looked in the back seat and grabbed the insulated pizza bag and a crumpled paper sack filled with dipping sauce and soda. The smell of pizza wafted into my nostrils for the thousandth time that night, and for once it didn't make me hungry. Instead, I just felt tired and sick to my stomach. It had been a long day. Heading to the front entrance, part of me wondered who could be here so late at night. It was past 11, and I would have thought that most workers would have gone home for the day. But when I buzzed the number that I had been given to let me in, a man answered in a tired-sounding voice. Hello. His words came through the intercom, fuzzy and filled with static. Hey, it's Puccino's Pizza. I got your pie. Yeah, come on up. I'm on floor 19. Just go left after you get off the elevator. It's the only room with the lights still on. The man sounded exhausted, and I felt some sympathy for him. At least I would get to go home after this delivery. He sounded like he was still going to be here for a while working late. Nobody orders a pizza at the office if they're planning on going home for supper. He buzzed me in, and I walked through a set of glass doors and then another, entering into an enormous foyer. The place looked old on the outside, but within it was sleek and modern. They had probably renovated it in the last 10 years by the looks of things. The lobby was all polished steel and glass, aside from one ominous gray stone wall. There was a fireplace straight ahead, like a guidepost leading visitors towards the elevators. As I approached the fireplace, I saw that it was large, almost as tall as me, with a flue of shining steel that stretched up indefinitely, disappearing into the high ceiling above. The place made me feel tiny. It was like being in the house of a giant at the top of a beanstalk. I was completely alone, my footsteps echoing in the dim and empty space. There was something creepy about being here by myself in the night, when this place was normally occupied with hundreds of people, busily marching about with cell phones in hand, high-heeled shoes and leather soles clicking across the polished marble floors, voices buzzing as they mingled together in a cacophony of business talk. But suddenly all that was gone. I had been inside this building before. Normally a receptionist would be here to greet me at the front desk, but I guess that they had gone home at this late hour. There wasn't even a janitor or a cleaning lady, mopping floors or shining the windows. Only me. When I arrived at the elevator, I hit the button to go up. It glowed a faint orange, and after a few seconds, an elevator door behind me opened with a ding. I got inside, and I tried to remember what the floor of the man had said. After such a long day, the number of apartments and addresses were blending together, and I couldn't remember if it was floor 18 or 19. My delivery slip was no help either, as it only had the street address and a random buzzer number. Instead of settling on one floor, I hit both buttons at the same time, thinking that I would peek my head out and see if there was anyone on the 18th floor before going up to the 19th. I was pretty sure that it was the latter of the two, but this seemed like the quickest way to check. The last thing that I wanted was to be wandering the dark, empty floor of some abandoned office space in the middle of the night. This place was creepy enough as it was without any of that. As the elevator ascended, I heard my stomach gurgle noisily. I had skipped dinner, and now it was catching up with me. I felt lightheaded and nauseated, and my ears were buzzing slightly, and a migraine was forming, with a dull pressure behind my eyes, making them feel like overinflated balloons about to pop. Finally, the elevator dinged, and I stepped off, rubbing my eyes. When I opened them, I looked around and saw that I was in a hallway with faded yellow wallpaper. The patterns on it looked retro and out of date. It reminded me of a set for a low-budget version of Mad Men, or some movie which had taken place in the 50s or 60s, only more depressing. The fluorescent lights overhead were flickering ever so slightly, as if they needed to be replaced, and I began to instinctively move away from them down the hall, trying to avoid making my headache worse. Go left after you get off the elevator, I said to myself, thinking this had to be the right floor. The lights were all on, and despite the poor quality of them, as I walked down the hallway looking for an office door, I saw none. It was like this corridor was all perfectly smooth, yellow walls leading towards a turn. Overhead, the lights continued flickering constantly, making me feel even more sick. There was something wrong with the electrical system on this floor of the building, I had guessed. The hallway broke to the right at the end, so I followed it and turned, looking off down another long stretch of unbroken corridor. At the end of this hallway, there was a left turn, and I figured that was where the office would be. I couldn't help but think this was an odd configuration for an office.
Hey,
Very
do you need a
odd.
med?
Suddenly,
med
I noticed
pack?
the smell was getting stronger as I walked.
Do you need a couple
It
med
was a
packs,
powerful...
bro? I mean, Isaac? Yeah, I do. I'm out of fucking med packs. Cool, here you go. Thanks. What about, do you need bulletproof armor? Yeah, I do. Cool. Here you go. You're welcome. Let's go, buddy. I have my bulletproof armor. Put the rest. Well, I don't need. Look at this shit. I have bulletproof armor now. Okay, see ya. See ya. Press play, yo.
mildew, as if I were in an old, rotted
A
basement.
blunt.
This section of the building must have had a recent flood from a bursted pipe or something like that, I thought to myself. The floor was squishy and wet beneath my feet, and I could feel it starting to soak through these seams of my cheap running shoes and moistening my socks. I kept walking, thinking I would have to ask the customer about this weird turn of events once I finally made it to him. But once I got to the end of the corridor, it just led on to another identical hallway. Another long, yellow-walled passageway, leading about 50 yards towards a turn.
If every Aussie uses my R8 for just 2 minutes a day, the impact we will make will blow you away.
Let's go walk around, dude. Walk in the back rooms, yo. You know what I mean, shit. Let's go walk around, go anywhere really. Go outside of this this compound area. This safe zone owned by the fucking MGB or whatever. Hey guys, you might want to fix that patch over here. Show me. See here, this patch? Oh yeah. We're gonna fix that. And you fucking might want to fix this too. Yeah, we are. Cool. What are you gonna do? Gonna walk around some more. I'll come back if I wanna, okay. Be careful out there. I will, trust me. Okay, see ya. See ya. A blunt, then we off. Yeah, buddy, then we off, con. Gang, gang. Let's go, buddy. Got me a fucking house, yo. Got me a house, in the back rooms now. On crib in the back rooms. Back rooms life, yo. This is so much better living in this world instead of the earth. Well, so much better than living in the fucking crappy 9 to 10 job. It's crappy, but now I get to do, I get to be who I want to be, yo. Now, I don't have to follow rules, yo. I can just be me. And that's a good thing, yo. I can just be shit. Fucking hell. Oh. 3, 2, 1. And action. 3, 2, 1, and action. Gang gang. Now where was that stairway? Yeah, that stairway. There was somewhere around here, right? I forgot, dude. The stairway was somewhere around here, mate. Was it here? No. Here? No. Was it? Well, basically. The stairs was somewhere around here, am I right, man? The stairs have to be somewhere around here, mate. Fuck. I'll see you whenever I'll see you whenever I find the stairs. You know, I'll see you then, yo. Shit, man. I'll see you then.